Someone actually sold cowboys a hat with a built-in thermometer, a saddle-mounted spittoon, and a hand-cranked ice cream maker in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And the most unhinged part? Cowboys actually bought all of it. The Wild West wasn't just gunfights and tumbleweeds. It was the golden age of the dumbest inventions ever sold to men, who carried loaded weapons and had absolutely nothing to lose. Today we're counting down 51 of the most gloriously stupid gadgets real cowboys spent real money on. Hit subscribe right now, because if you miss even one of these, your ancestors would be genuinely embarrassed for you. Let's ride. 1. A hat with a built-in thermometer sounds like the most useless gadget ever strapped to a human skull. Cowboys genuinely bought these things just to complain about the heat, with real numbers to back them up. Picture a sweaty rancher squinting at a tiny dial bolted to his brim. He nods grimly like he just confirmed a fever. Cowboys did not need science to know Texas summers were brutal. They just wanted proof so their bunkmates would stop calling them dramatic. The thermometer melted before the complaining ever did, and nobody even noticed the irony. 2. Somewhere on the dusty plains, a cowboy decided the one thing missing from frontier life was a proper bath. Companies started selling portable folding bathtubs that weighed more than the horse dragging them across the desert. Picture a trail boss watching his prize stallion collapse under the weight of hygiene equipment. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew just used a creek like normal people. These tubs promised luxury and delivered exhausted livestock instead. Somehow, frontier marketing convinced grown men that cleanliness was worth risking their only transportation. History just shrugs at that logic and moves right along. 3. Mustache guards were a real product. Cowboys clipped onto their coffee cups just to protect their facial hair while drinking. A rugged gunslinger walks into a saloon looking dangerous and unshakable. Then he pulls out a tiny metal guard and clips it onto his mustache before sipping coffee like a nobleman at tea time. The other cowboys apparently thought this was completely normal and bought them by the dozen. Somehow protecting a mustache from coffee steam became more important than looking tough in front of strangers. Frontier priorities were clearly upside down, and nobody questioned it out loud. 4. Electrified cattle prods sound futuristic until you learn cowboys had to power them with a hand-crank generator they spun themselves. A rancher stands in a dusty field, cranking furiously with one arm, just to zap a stubborn cow into moving 3 measly feet forward. The cow barely reacts, while the cowboy ends up exhausted and out of breath from his own machine. Somehow this counted as an upgrade over yelling louder or waving a stick around. Frontier inventors clearly believed more effort meant more progress, even when results proved otherwise, every single time. 5. Snake-proof boots sound like genius frontier engineering, until you learn they used 14 layers of leather so thick cowboys genuinely could not feel their own feet. A rattlesnake strikes at a cowboy's ankle and just bounces off like it hit a brick wall. The cowboy does not even notice, because his feet went numb somewhere around layer 9. The snakes could not bite through, but walking suddenly became a full-body guessing game. Frontier safety apparently meant trading snake bites for permanent pins and needles, just to feel a little peace of mind. 6. Sheriffs actually bought collapsible portable jail cells built for hauling prisoners across the trail. The problem was a clever prisoner could fold his way out of one in about 30 seconds flat. A smug outlaw sits calmly while the deputy proudly locks the folding bars into place. Moments later, he casually strolls off while everyone stands there completely confused. These portable cells were marketed as revolutionary law enforcement technology. In reality, they were basically wooden origami that criminals treated like a fun little puzzle before walking straight into freedom without breaking a single sweat. 7. Pocket-sized mirrors became a strange obsession among cowboys who wanted to check if they looked tough enough before a duel. A gunslinger stands outside a saloon, adjusting his hat and squinting at his own reflection like a nervous teenager before prom. Meanwhile, his rival is already halfway down the street ready to draw. Vanity apparently outranked survival instincts on the frontier. These tiny mirrors were sold as confidence boosters for men about to risk their lives. Somehow looking intimidating mattered more than actually being fast on the draw when bullets were flying. 8. Saddle-mounted umbrella holders were built for cowboys who refused to admit they hated the sun. A rugged rancher rides across the open plains with a tiny umbrella bobbing above his head like a parasol at a garden party. His fellow cowboys sit sunburned and miserable beside him the entire ride. Nobody wanted to admit they needed shade, because toughness was the entire brand of the Wild West. This little umbrella quietly solved the problem, while everyone else pretended heat stroke was simply part of the job. Comfort apparently needed a good disguise out west. 9. Portable folding church pews were sold to trail bosses who wanted optional Sunday service out on the open range. The pews would collapse the moment the first hymn started sending cowboys tumbling backward mid-prayer. The preacher solemnly kept leading the verse while 3 grown men crashed into the dirt behind him. Instead of holy silence, there was stifled laughter and dust flying everywhere across the campsite. Nobody thought to test these pews before Sunday morning, apparently. Faith on the frontier came with a side of chaos and bruised dignity for everyone involved that day. 10. Lonely cowboys actually ordered ventriloquist dummy kits through the mail, just to have someone to talk to around the campfire. A grown man hunches over a wooden dummy whispering conversation starters, while his fellow ranch hands stare in confused horror nearby. New recruits arriving at camp were reportedly terrified to see a grown cowboy having a full conversation with a creepy wooden face at midnight. Companionship on the frontier apparently came in strange forms. Somehow, a talking wooden puppet felt like a reasonable solution to isolation out on the open range for lonely men. 11. Cowboys actually ordered mail-order taxidermy kits, just to stuff dead rattlesnakes as decorative trophies for their bunkhouses. A proud cowboy sets his freshly stuffed snake on a shelf, expecting it to last forever, as proof of his bravery. Within a week, the poorly stuffed reptile starts sagging and falling apart like a deflating balloon. His bunkmates walk by daily watching the trophy slowly collapse into a sad, leathery lump. Somehow, frontier taxidermy skills never quite matched frontier ambition. Bravery on display turned into an accidental science experiment nobody asked for out on the range. 12. Mechanical egg scrambler contraptions promised to make breakfast easier with a simple hand crank built right into the machine. A hungry cowboy cranks the handle, expecting perfectly scrambled eggs, only to watch raw egg fling violently across the entire campsite. His fellow ranch hands duck for cover, while yolk drips from the chuckwagon and everyone's boots. Breakfast turns into a slippery crime scene before the coffee even finishes boiling. Somehow this counted as modern convenience on the frontier. Cowboys apparently preferred chaos and cleanup over just cracking an egg into a pan like normal folks. 13. Edible trail maps printed on rice paper sounded like brilliant survival gear until the first drop of rain hit them. A cowboy pulls out his soggy map, only to watch the directions dissolve into mush right in his hands. Within seconds, his only guide through unfamiliar territory becomes a useless paste stuck to his fingers. His riding partner just stares in disbelief as they both realize they are now officially lost. Somehow, nobody tested these maps against actual weather before selling them nationwide. Frontier navigation apparently came with a side of snack food and total unpredictability. 14. Pocket periscopes were sold so sneaky cowboys could spy over saloon doors without anyone noticing them at all. Curious cowboy raises his tiny periscope above the swinging doors, expecting total secrecy from everyone inside. Instead, the awkward metal tube pokes up so obviously that every single person in the saloon turns and stares directly at him. His plan for stealth instantly becomes the most noticeable thing in the entire room. Somehow, spy gear on the frontier made men more conspicuous instead of invisible. Sneaking around apparently required better tools than a shiny metal tube. 15. Anti-snoring nose plugs were marketed to bunkhouse cowboys as the ultimate solution for peaceful nights of shared sleep. A tired rancher shoves the plugs in, expecting silence, only to wake his bunkmates with loud whistling noises instead of snoring. The entire bunkhouse lies awake listening to a strange new sound nobody can quite identify or explain. Somehow, the cure turned out louder and stranger than the original problem it was meant to fix. Sleep harmony on the frontier apparently meant trading one annoying noise for a completely different one every single night. 16. Cowboys actually bought portable telegraph kits, expecting instant communication out on the open range with friends and family. A hopeful rancher sets up his shiny new equipment only to realize nobody he knows owns one anywhere nearby. He taps out message after message into complete silence with no reply ever coming back through the wire. His fellow cowboys watch him tap away for hours wondering what exactly he is trying to prove. Somehow, frontier technology outpaced frontier friendships by several decades at least. Communication apparently required more than one person owning the same expensive gadget. 17. Leather-wrapped alarm clocks were designed to moo instead of ring, so they would blend naturally into everyday ranch life. A sleeping cowboy jolts awake, convinced an actual cow has wandered directly into his tent at sunrise. He grabs his boots, ready to chase livestock, only to realize the sound came from the tiny clock sitting on his nightstand. His bunkmates laugh as he stumbles around half awake, hunting for a cow that never existed in the first place. Somehow blending in on the frontier meant confusing exhausted men every single morning without fail. 18. Cowboys bought miniature printing press kits just to print their own wanted posters and control exactly how flattering the drawing looked. A vain outlaw sketches himself looking heroic and handsome, before printing dozens of copies to hang around town proudly. Meanwhile, actual lawmen struggle to identify him because the poster looks nothing like his real weathered face. Townsfolk end up searching for a dashing stranger instead of the actual criminal walking right past them daily. Somehow, vanity on the frontier accidentally helped outlaws avoid capture better than any disguise ever could. 19. Self-sharpening spurs promised cowboys endless sharpness by having the spurs grind against each other automatically while riding. A proud cowboy straps them on, expecting lifelong sharpness without ever touching a whetstone again in his life. Instead, the spurs slowly sharpen themselves down into tiny, useless nubs after just a few long rides. He looks down one day to find nothing left but smooth metal stubs where sharp points used to be. Somehow, frontier innovation solved a problem by accidentally destroying the very tool meant to fix it. 20. Cowboys carried pocket-sized legal contract booklets, believing they could make cattle trades official and completely binding out on the trail. Two ranchers shake hands and sign the tiny booklet, feeling proud of their fancy new business arrangement. Later, when a dispute breaks out, no actual court in the territory recognizes the homemade contract as valid paperwork. Both men stand there confused, holding a worthless booklet, while a judge shakes his head at them. Somehow, frontier paperwork looked official, but carried absolutely no legal weight anywhere that mattered. 21. Coyote call whistles worked exactly as advertised and attracted coyotes from up to 40 miles away without fail. A nervous cowboy blows the whistle, expecting one friendly coyote to wander over for company. Instead, an entire howling pack surrounds his camp within the hour, looking hungry and curious. He spends the whole night awake, banging pots together, just to keep them from getting closer. His fellow ranch hands wake up exhausted and furious, at the whistle sitting uselessly by the fire. Sometimes a product works too well, and that becomes the actual problem out west. 22. Steam-powered fence post drivers promised effortless ranch work by pounding posts into the ground, automatically, without any manual labor. A hopeful rancher fires up the machine, expecting fences to build themselves across his entire property by sundown. Instead, the contraption overheats and melts down before a single post gets driven into the dirt. Black smoke pours from the machine while cowboys scramble backward, covering their faces from the mess. The rancher ends up pounding posts by hand anyway, just like his father always did. Progress apparently arrived a few decades early and unprepared. 23. Saddle stirrup height adjusters came with 17 different settings, promising the perfect custom fit for every single rider. A picky cowboy spends an entire morning fiddling with dials, trying to find his ideal comfortable position for the trail ahead. The moment he finally gets off his horse for lunch, he completely forgets which setting he used. Getting back on means starting the entire process over from scratch every single time, without exception. His riding partner just shakes his head, watching him fiddle again for the third day straight. 24. Boot heel flasks hid whiskey cleverly inside a secret compartment, built directly into the sole of the boot. A thirsty cowboy takes his first celebratory sip, only to notice his sock feels strangely warm and wet moments later. The flask leaked the entire bottle straight into his boot, after just one single use out on the trail. He spends the rest of the day squishing through mud with whiskey-soaked socks and a bruised ego. His bunkmates smell him coming from 20 feet away and refuse to sit anywhere near his boots at dinner. 25. Hand-cranked ice cream makers were sold aggressively to desert cowboys who had exactly zero access to any actual ice. A hopeful rancher cranks the machine for hours under blistering heat, waiting for cream to magically freeze into dessert. Instead, he ends up with warm, sweetened milk sloshing around inside a very expensive metal bucket. His fellow cowboys watch him crank away sweating buckets while getting nothing but disappointment for his effort. Somebody clearly sold this product to men who had never once seen a desert in their entire life. 26. Personal brand iron sets came with cowboys' own initials, so they could officially mark absolutely everything they happened to own. An enthusiastic rancher starts branding his saddle, his boots, his hat, and even his favorite coffee mug without hesitation. His bunkmates find their own belongings accidentally scorched with his initials after he gets carried away one long evening. Chaos erupts the next morning, when nobody can tell whose gear actually belongs to who anymore across camp. Ownership on the frontier apparently became a lot more confusing once branding turned into a personal hobby. 27. Inflatable scarecrow dummies were stuffed into bedrolls, specifically to fool cattle rustlers into thinking cowboys were sleeping right there. A clever rancher sets up his fake dummy, expecting rustlers to creep away, terrified at the sight of a sleeping man. Instead, the rustlers spot the obviously fake shape and burst out laughing before stealing cattle anyway without any fear. Word spreads through outlaw circles that these dummies became a running joke rather than an actual deterrent for anyone. Security on the ranch apparently needed something scarier than a lumpy pile of straw and blankets. 28. Saloon breath mints, shaped like tiny pistols, were sold as a novelty treat for cowboys, wanting fresher breath after drinking. A grinning cowboy tries popping one into his mouth, only to burst out laughing at the ridiculous little gun shape between his teeth. His laughter causes the mint to shoot backward out of his mouth and skid across the saloon floor entirely. His friends crack up watching him chase down his own breath mint under a nearby table. Nobody in that saloon successfully ate one of these mints without making a complete fool of themselves first. 29. Pocket-sized faro card counting machines promised cowboys a secret edge over the house during late-night saloon card games. A confident gambler slips his tiny device under the table, expecting easy winnings all night long without getting caught. Within minutes, a sharp-eyed dealer spots the suspicious clicking sound and immediately bans the machine from every table in town. Word travels fast between saloons, and soon every single establishment across the territory refuses to allow the device inside. Cheating technology apparently moved faster than cheaters could keep their secret hidden for long. 30. Mail-order hypnosis manuals promised cowboys an easy method for training stubborn horses, using nothing but calm, soothing words. A determined rancher stands in front of his horse, reciting hypnotic phrases, expecting instant obedience and perfect calm behavior. The horse stares back completely unbothered while the cowboy grows more confused and increasingly frustrated with every failed attempt. Nearby ranch hands watch the one-sided conversation unfold, wondering who exactly is supposed to be hypnotized here. In the end, the horse remained just as stubborn, and the cowboy looked considerably more foolish than before. 31. Leather bib overalls came stitched with 22 separate pockets, promising cowboys the ultimate storage solution for trail life. An organized rancher fills every single pocket with tools, coins, jerky, and random trinkets before heading out for the day. By evening, he can't remember which pocket holds his knife or his matches or even his own money anymore. His frustrated search turns into a full-body pat-down while his bunkmates laugh at his panicked scrambling. Having more storage apparently created more confusion instead of the convenience everyone originally hoped these overalls would provide. 32. Bullet polishing kits promised cowboys shiny, gleaming ammunition that looked impressive before ever being loaded into a gun. A proud cowboy spends his entire evening buffing each bullet until it sparkles under the lantern light like tiny jewelry. Moments later, he fires his gun and every single polished bullet disappears instantly into the dirt or a target. His bunkmates question why he spent hours making something disappear look pretty for only a few seconds. Effort and results apparently had very little relationship whenever bullets were involved out on the frontier. 33. Collapsible tin prospecting sluice boxes promised gold miners a lightweight tool that folded flat for easy transport across rough terrain. An eager prospector sets his box into the river, expecting gold-heavy gravel to sift through smoothly without any trouble. The moment real gravel hits the flimsy tin, the entire box buckles and folds shut like a broken accordion. His gold, along with his gravel, spills straight back into the river while he stares in stunned silence. Lightweight construction apparently could not survive contact with the exact job it was built for. 34. Telescoping backscratchers were cleverly disguised as respectable shooting sticks, so cowboys could itch themselves in complete public dignity. A stiff cowboy extends his stick during a formal town gathering, pretending to examine the horizon while secretly scratching his back. Nearby townsfolk notice his oddly satisfied expression and start whispering about his strange shooting stick obsession. Word spreads that he never actually shoots anything, and just enjoys extending the stick constantly in public. Dignity on the frontier apparently required a surprising amount of creative disguise and quiet desperation. 35. Weather prediction cards based on cloud shapes promised cowboys accurate forecasts, using nothing but a quick glance toward the sky. A hopeful cowboy checks his card and confidently announces sunshine right before 3 consecutive thunderstorms drench the entire camp completely. His soaked bunkmates glare at him while he keeps insisting the cards are usually reliable most of the time. By the 3rd storm, nobody trusts his forecasts, and the cards get tossed straight into the campfire. Frontier meteorology apparently relied more on luck than any actual scientific cloud reading method. 36. Spring-loaded neckerchief straighteners promised cowboys a perfectly crisp neckerchief with just one simple, satisfying snap of the device. An excited cowboy tests his new gadget, expecting a neat professional adjustment, right before an important town meeting. Instead, the spring launches with surprising force and smacks the neckerchief directly into his own unsuspecting eye. He stumbles backward, clutching his face, while his friends struggle not to burst out laughing at the scene. Looking sharp on the frontier apparently came with a genuine risk of minor personal injury involved. 37. Cowboy handshake strength trainers promised a firm, impressive grip that would intimidate anyone during an important business negotiation deal. A determined rancher squeezes the trainer daily, expecting handshakes that command instant respect from every stranger he meets in town. Once trained, his handshake becomes so crushingly powerful that grown men wince and pull away in obvious pain. Business partners start avoiding him entirely just to protect their own fingers from his newly dangerous grip. Confidence on the frontier apparently came at the painful expense of everyone unlucky enough to shake his hand. 38. Portable wooden trophy plaques let cowboys award themselves grand titles like Best Cowboy. After completing the most ordinary daily tasks, a proud rancher hands himself a trophy simply for saddling his horse correctly on the very first attempt that morning. His bunkmates roll their eyes, watching him proudly display the plaque above his bedroll like a genuine championship achievement. Soon, every cowboy in camp starts awarding themselves trophies for tasks as basic as tying their own boots. Self-confidence on the frontier apparently required very little actual accomplishment to justify a full celebration. 39. Collapsible wooden observation towers were built by cowboys, hoping to spot dangerous stampedes from a safe elevated vantage point nearby. A dedicated crew spends 4 exhausting hours assembling the tall, wobbly structure, piece by piece under the blazing afternoon sun. The moment the final board gets hammered into place, the entire tower collapses into a pile within 3 short minutes. Exhausted cowboys stare at the wreckage, wondering why they spent an entire afternoon building something so fragile. Stampede safety on the frontier apparently required sturdier planning than 4 hours of frustrated hammering provided. 40. Hand-cranked butter churners strapped directly onto wagon wheels promised cowboys fresh butter made automatically during every long, bumpy journey. An excited rancher watches proudly as cream inside the churner transforms into butter with every single rotation of the wagon wheel. Moments later, a bump in the road jostles everything backward, and the butter turns straight back into liquid cream again. This frustrating cycle repeats itself every single quarter mile for the entire journey, without ever producing a final usable product. Butter on the frontier apparently remained forever trapped between 2 disappointing and unstable states. 41. Anti-dust eye goggles, made from painted wood with tiny slits, promised cowboys total protection from swirling desert dust storms. A confident rancher straps them on, expecting clear vision through even the harshest windstorm, rolling across the open plains. Instead, the narrow slits reduce his sight down to 2 tiny pinholes, while dust slips straight through the gaps anyway. He stumbles blindly through camp, bumping into wagons, while his bunkmates dodge out of his confused wandering path. Protection on the frontier apparently meant trading clear sight for a completely different kind of blindness instead. 42. Wooden false teeth, carved by the local gunsmith, promised cowboys a functional smile after losing their real teeth to frontier misfortune. A hungry cowboy proudly bites into a piece of tough beef jerky, expecting his brand new teeth to handle the job easily. Instead, the wooden teeth splinter apart, instantly leaving jagged pieces scattered across his lap and the dinner table. His bunkmates stare in shock as he spits out shards while trying to salvage what remains of his dinner. Dental innovation on the frontier apparently could not survive its very first real meal. 43. Armadillo shell canteen covers were marketed as nature's perfect insulation for keeping water cool during long rides under blazing sunshine. A thirsty cowboy fills his canteen, expecting the natural shell to shield his water from the relentless desert heat all day. Within an hour, the shell cracks wide open under direct sunlight, spilling his entire water supply straight into the sand. He stands there, stranded and thirsty, staring at the useless cracked shell now lying broken beside his boots. Nature apparently made better armor for armadillos than it ever did for thirsty traveling cowboys. 44. Cactus identification encyclopedias sold in 12 heavy volumes promised cowboys expert knowledge of every single plant found across the frontier. A curious rancher hauls the entire bulky collection in a separate cart just to identify one single cactus blocking his trail. By the time he finds the correct page, his horse has already wandered around the cactus without any trouble. His bunkmates tease him relentlessly about needing 12 books just to recognize a plant with obvious visible spikes. Frontier education apparently came with far more weight than any actual practical daily use required. 45. Spring-loaded bedroll. Unrollers promised tired cowboys instant effortless setup after a long exhausting day of riding across the plains. An eager cowboy triggers the mechanism, expecting his bedroll to unfold neatly and perfectly right beside his cozy campfire setup. Instead, the spring launches his bedroll violently across the entire camp, landing it directly inside a fresh mud puddle every single time. He trudges over nightly to retrieve his soaked bedding, while his bunkmates laugh at the same predictable outcome repeating. Convenience on the frontier apparently came with a guaranteed muddy inconvenience attached every night. 46. Glow-in-the-dark trail rope sets promised cowboys easy nighttime visibility for guiding cattle safely through dark, unfamiliar terrain. A hopeful rancher strings up the glowing rope, expecting a clear, helpful path visible from a comfortable, safe distance away. Instead, the glow attracts every single moth beetle and flying insect across the entire Great Plains toward his campsite immediately. Cowboys spend the whole night swatting bugs away from their faces instead of actually watching the cattle. Visibility on the frontier apparently came bundled with an unwanted swarm of buzzing insect companions. 47. Clockwork automated hat-tipping mechanisms promised cowboys effortless, polite greetings without ever having to lift a single finger themselves. A well-dressed cowboy triggers the device while passing a respectable lady expecting a smooth, gentlemanly tip of his hat. Instead, the mechanism fires with shocking force, sending his hat flying completely off his head and into the muddy street. The lady watches in stunned silence while he chases his hat down on hands and knees nearby. Politeness on the frontier apparently came with a genuine risk of public humiliation attached to it. 48. Wind-powered walking stick propellers promised elderly ranch owners extra forward momentum with each and every determined step they took. A proud elderly rancher grips his propeller cane, expecting gentle, helpful assistance while strolling calmly through town on a windy afternoon. Instead, a sudden gust sends him lurching forward at an uncontrollable speed, past startled neighbors and parked wagons. He stumbles past the general store, waving frantically while onlookers scramble out of his unpredictable rushing path. Mobility assistance on the frontier apparently came with absolutely zero reliable braking system whatsoever. 49. Official cowboy retirement certificates sold entirely through the mail promised aging ranch hands a dignified send-off from frontier life. A weary old cowboy proudly frames his certificate, expecting recognition and respect from the entire ranching community around him. Nobody actually signed the document, and no organization anywhere recognized it as anything more than decorative paper. His neighbors politely nod along, while privately having no idea what the certificate is even supposed to represent. Retirement on the frontier apparently required nothing more than a stamp and someone willing to pay for it. 50. Pocket-sized opera glasses were sold to cowboys specifically for spotting cattle across long stretches of open frontier grassland. An eager rancher raises his glasses toward a distant herd, expecting sharp, clear detail visible from a comfortable, faraway distance. Instead, everything past 30 feet blurs into a useless smudge, leaving him squinting at nothing but colorful, fuzzy shapes. His bunkmates tease him for buying fancy theater glasses that couldn't even spot a cow up close. Distance viewing on the frontier apparently required far more power than delicate opera equipment ever provided. 51. Official Wild West business cards, printed on genuine leather, promised cowboys a classy, impressive way to introduce themselves in town. An ambitious cowboy pays 3 times his entire weekly wage just to hand out fancy leather cards to complete strangers nearby. Within a single afternoon of saddle riding, his cards soak straight through with sweat and become completely unreadable smudged leather. Townsfolk squint at the ruined cards, trying to decipher a name that has already dissolved into illegible mush. Professional branding on the frontier apparently could not survive a single afternoon of honest hard work. And there you have it, 51 gadgets that prove the Wild West was less about gunfights and more about grown men strapping umbrellas to saddles and hypnotizing horses that clearly were not listening. Somewhere out there, a cowboy lost his teeth to jerky, his hat to a spring, and his dignity to a mustache guard. And honestly, America is better for knowing it. If your jaw is still on the floor, smash that like button, because these inventors definitely never got one. Subscribe to Dumb Historical Inventions so you never miss the next batch of frontier nonsense. And drop a comment right now telling me which invention you would have actually bought, because I need to know how doomed we all are. See you in the next disaster.